that's Mike.
That's Toya.
And this is Tech Beats and Bytes.
If you guys don't know, you came down here during Art Basel Week. So if you are not from Miami, you are down here one of the craziest weeks of the year.
One of the best.
You will see a whole bunch of pretentious people pretending to care about things on canvas, and they really do not care. They're just there for the free.
We mean it.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
We mean them free drinks too.
Well, yeah.
Free drinks.
They will be
Fun
looking for
times.
wine and free entry and
Yes.
any event they can get into that they forgot to RSVP for. That is what you're going to encounter this week.
All about the guest list.
But behind all of the pretentious stuff, you have amazing artists and you have amazing culture. You have about $7 billion that's exchanged in 7 days.
Yes.
Within a 8-mile radius. It is
Yep.
known as Art Basel Miami. And I thought, what would be better than to bring in one of the art advocates, somebody that is very, very protective of black arts, cultural arts, arts for women, just one that's advocating for everybody out there. So
Yes.
we brought in the superhero, Melissa
Yay.
Hunter Davis. Let's give her a round of applause.
Hello. Thank you.
Melissa Hunter is with Sugarcane Media. The name alone is great because there's a sugarcane vodka that I had in Malawi. Just want you to know it was amazing. Still sitting there, can't drink all of it. It is strong.
Strong.
Wow.
Strong. It is strong. Melissa, won't you tell the viewers, as well as our 750 people in the audience that's sitting here listening, won't you tell everybody about what you do and a little bit about yourself?
So I'm the founder of Sugarcane Magazine. We are our digital platform from Arts of Africa and the African diaspora. Sugarcane is a part of Sugarcane Global Media. We do production for local organizations here in South Florida. We cover arts from all over the globe, everywhere from Chicago to Dakar, from Cape Town to Mississippi. We are looking for black artists. And every year we do a guide for Art Basel where people can find black artists. A lot of times when you go out, you see a lot of art on the wall, and you may not know who the artist is, you don't know their ethnicity, or there's some people who just simply like to collect black artists, especially now. We've seen a lot of changes with the Smithsonian. We are currently going through a really tough time politically, and people are looking at black folks to tell our story more than any other time. So people want to see our work, they want to collect our work, they want it a part of their collections, and I tell people where to go to find it.
Wow.
That is probably one of the best summaries we've heard from about what people do.
Real concise.
Yeah, real concise.
Yeah, to the point.
Got a lot of questions asked about that.
And
So,
she said Chicago, so it's dope.
yeah, whatever.
One time.
Yeah.
Right. But real quick, before we go too far from your summary, because it was so nice, why are people looking for us to tell our stories?
Control the narrative, change the perspective.
Right.
Black people are probably the most loved on one hand, and maybe not so much on the other. I think, what's the term that somebody's used about our current leadership? We're also feared, right? So we tell a story of a group of people who have found a way to thrive despite having what some people would think success beat out of us, right? But we're still able to make it, we're still able to sing, we're still able to create. So in this particular time, since we seem to be the focus of so much political strife, socially we're having a difficult time with people in power, we have a lot to say. And it's unfortunate that our story hasn't changed. So like my mother, I remember my grandmother being part of the civil rights movement in the 50s. And we're still having these same conversations in 2017. Her goal was for her granddaughter to never have to have these conversations.
Right.
And yet I'm still telling my 12-year-old, how to behave when you go out, how to behave in front of the police, that we still need to have this conversation. She's no longer just free to be a little girl.
So
Right.
why don't you tell us the importance of, because a lot of people don't understand how much history and how much is told through art. They know through the arts, performing arts and things, but they don't know through visual art how much of this story is told and kind of controlled by the arts. So won't you kind of more so explain the importance of black art being not just collected and invested into,
Right.
but, I would say compartmentalized, memorized, put into the right museums to tell different stories. Won't you tell that part?
So we've always created, right? We've told stories through quilting. We've always had painters. We've always had writers and singers. Major museums have always noticed this, and we weren't always collected. We weren't always considered collectible.
Yeah.
I would say that about in the 60s, Once you had people who, both black and white, who went through the civil rights movement and were able to come together to work, that they saw the importance of these stories and wanted to make sure that they collected it. They also kind of controlled how they were told. So it was told through a very contemporary arts lens. And honestly, the people who control it, they are looking for something that they can understand, right? So they are looking for more contemporary work where maybe things aren't as clear cut. You know, you have some artists who, when they tell a story, it's like Adonis Parker, for example. If Adonis Parker is going to tell you about love, he's going to show you a man and a woman embraced, a kiss, a caress. Whereas in a more contemporary way, they might tell love through two black lines. And those museums look for a more contemporary story.
So, with that being said, I know you're trying to be conservative. You've already said your good piece. So if this was for your promotional video, you have up to 5 minutes and 45 seconds to use it. Now we're going to get into the other stuff. One of the fun facts, you mentioned the 60s, and I always think about contemporary arts, and I think about people in Miami. I remember about 3 years ago, everybody started duplicating the three-pointed crown from Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Yes, they did.
And the crown started popping up everywhere.
Yes.
A fun fact, in 1998, getting my degree at Florida State, I wrote a paper comparing Jean-Michel Basquiat to Prince.
Okay.
And at that point, his work, and we're talking about 1998. In 1998, Jean-Michel Basquiat's work was compared to the work of a 4-year-old child. I remember that line in my paper, and I had the site where I got that quote from. So I was saying how something with so little skill.
Right.
It's 1998. I'm 19 years old, so forgive me before we get too far into this. So they were saying with somebody with so little skill, they didn't understand how his work would ever hold of any value. And my argument was Prince, of course, on his first album, played 26 instruments. He played the whole thing on his album. He had to go back and play it over and over again. So it was the skill of the artist versus the hype of pretty much Andy Warhol.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
As they continued to drive the value down, and I continued to grow up and went from being a little boy writing papers for Florida State to becoming a man, those $10,000 to $3,000 pieces became worth $4 to $40 million.
Right.
Now, I thought it was just Jean-Michel Basquiat that they were doing this to.
Right.
I realized they started doing this to African art,
Yes.
Ghana. I realized they started doing this to Haitian art. I've noticed the trend of driving down the value of black art, it quickly being acquired, then becoming a high-level asset and becoming an investment. Why does that continue to happen to our people? And how do you prevent something like that happening? Because I think there was some anger on the internet,
Right.
without saying too many people's name, about the discriminatory elements of Art Basel.
We need to control our own market. Okay. So if we look at Charles White, I was talking to Adonis Parker. Some of you may know him. If you bank in One United Bank, if you look at your ATM card, you see Adonis's work. Mm-hmm. So he remembers in the 70s being able to buy Charles White on the street.
I remember him.
In New York. Mm-hmm. I know for a fact that in October, I could only get a print for $3,000. I went to a fair. Sometimes it's the knowledge of the artist I don't think we're paid attention to. Charles White was just another street artist. I think that once we continue to tell our stories and control our stories and bring other people in, that controls the value, and that's when they see the value in us. Just like with, people who have social media handles, right? If you don't push yourself out there, you can do the greatest work in the world. But if you don't put yourself out there, nobody knows who you are. You're not considered valuable in the media.
Okay, let's add to that. I know somebody about 4'9.5", and she came up to me as I was unpacking stuff in my house, and she said, "Do we need another contemporary arts museum?" A lot of these museums are recycling artwork, and it's the exact same stuff, and they still haven't talked into this undervalued market that we're talking about.
It's because that's what's selling. So that same fair that I went to, that was all that sold, was contemporary art. None of the classical black artists sold that weekend.
Wow.
It was only the contemporary art. And some of it is like simple stuff. They're on Instagram. You can talk to these people. You know who they are. This week you're going to see them. They're not going to be fancy. They're going to be walking around catching an Uber like everybody else. You know them, and that's who's hot. Some of these folks are dead. Elizabeth Capelet, we checking for her? No. And we don't have black artists in our art history courses anymore. You know that, don't you?
Yeah.
So I can't tell you
Only way I learned about black artists were between you and Trina.
See?
Trina and Anthony Burks. That's who I go to when I need to learn something.
Right. So, and it shouldn't be that way. I can't tell you how many graduates I know who study museum studies, studied art history. They never learned about black artists, ever.
Wow.
Ever. They may have learned about Basquiat, and that's a maybe, but that was as far as it went.
But you get introduced to Basquiat through the whole Andy Warhol phase.
Exactly.
Right.
So what they did was they came out of school, and now you have a plethora of Instagram accounts of people who are really just researching, trying to find artists that look like them. That's all. That's how that started. Because they don't know who they are. It was a Google search, and they pull up images, and they post it. It's just as much of an education for them. And who are we focusing on? We're focusing on photography. We're focusing on contemporary art. So they're hot. We're focusing on Instagram. People need Instagrammable moments. That's how your museums get packed. I can't take a picture of it. It's not cute. I'm not going to your museum.
Right. It's
and
all
that's
about
just
the moments.
real.
Yeah.
Right.
So what does it mean for the future of art, especially when it comes to our art, for the fact that it's not being taught? You're kind of like having to self-learn. Is that a good thing because it sort of democratizes the playing field? Or does it create more of a barrier to entry because there is no standardized understanding or
So basically we got to
support?
become the Cardi B's of the art world.
Right.
Well,
So let's see what it is.
I think it's a problem, but I also say wait on that because that's our next project is to make sure that that's no longer an issue.
Okay.
So
Getting into
that's our
education curriculum?
Yeah. So that's
Okay.
our next big project. That shouldn't be. And it's the same way in theater. My background is theater. And we did not learn about black playwrights at all. I remember choosing a very obscure playwright and getting docked 10 points because my teacher had never heard of him. So across the
So
arts.
no points
basic-
for bringing something to his attention.
I was about to say, so basically what you're telling us is the art world is no different than the technology world. People don't like to invest in what they don't know in something
Right.
that's outside of their comfort zone.
That's a human.
Unless someone co-signs.
That's just a human, yeah. That's where we are. We really have to control our narratives, control our stories, embrace ourselves
Right.
by our own work.
So hold on, fiddle me this then. Oprah, Tyler Perry, Michael Jordan, and I know y'all gonna laugh, but I'm gonna say his name because he does have impact right now. Steve Harvey. They all get together.
Right.
They pick 7 to 12 black artists that they decide they're going to invest into. As I said, I remember one of my mentors said to me, was like, well, how does a piece get valued at $40 million? And he said, because somebody else was willing to pay 39. And that's it.
Yep.
There's really no way to set the market. So they all come to an artist that's been selling for $10,000, $5,000. And they say, we're all going to buy 5 pieces from you. And we're going to buy these pieces from you at $250,000. Then we're going to donate it to a museum because we're going to get it evaluated by Sotheby's and Christie's. And it's going to be worth $500,000 because it's us that owns it.
Right.
And then they donate it to a museum. Now it's in the museum. Now they have twice the amount that they spent on it as a tax write-off. The artist has been paid now 20 times X of what they would normally get paid. Is my Breaking Bad art theory of how to watch the art money culture, is it really that simple, or am I thinking of it?
No, and that's what they do, and that's what they've done
Yeah.
consistently.
There's a really great show called Adam Ruins Everything on True TV.
Oh, yes.
And he did an episode on art and debunked the whole thing. And it's basically what you said. They basically like buy art, talk amongst themselves like we need to get this up because we invested in it.
Right.
Let's make this hot. His value goes up. Our value goes up because we own it. Now it's worth something because we collectively agree in our little circle that it has a price tag
Hold
of
on.
X dollars.
And before you say that, I want everybody in the audience to understand art is the one cryptocurrency that you
Yes.
can control if you talk to the right people.
Yep.
Say it again.
Exactly.
Say it again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Art is the one cryptocurrency that you can control if you talk to the right people.
Yes.
It's the only thing that's priceless and worthless at the same time.
And that's another thing that we need to work on once we get our millionaires and our billionaires is to get them into the museums, because that's precisely what they do. So they buy a particular artist, they like that artist's work, they say, hey, Mr. Curator, Miss Curator, I just bought this piece by this fantastic guy. $20,000. Let's do a show around his work.
Right.
And now that $20,000 piece, how much is it worth now?
It's worth at least 40
But
at the
if
bare
we're
minimum.
not on those boards,
Right.
we
We're
don't
not
have the
getting the art
ability to
in.
do that.
The gatekeepers.
So when we get that, when we get up there, Cardi B needs to be talking to somebody about art. Jay-Z told her what to do.
Yeah.
That's the next conversation she needs to have.
But I mean, and I think people should understand it doesn't have to be $20,000-$50,000 pieces. Everybody
No.
can't afford it. But
Right.
No.
if you have an account with Bank of America, Sotheby's will evaluate your art for free. That's what they do.
Yeah.
So buy art from anybody and just go get a price on it and get that little certificate, and you now have an investment.
Exactly. And there's different ways to work with artists. There are artists who will let you buy things on consignment. You can give them a couple of $1,000 down and keep giving it to them. That's a good thing about Instagram and social media, is because now you have access to people.
Yeah.
So you don't need to go through the gallery where they're, adding on top to that price. You can do that yourself. You can go buy prints. You can go buy small works. A lot of artists did small works that kind of never sold. They just sit around, especially a lot of the earlier black artists. A lot of those pieces are really inexpensive. There's a collector in Little Haiti who has a Romare Bearden that he bought for $20 off of eBay.
What?
Because the
Romare
person
Beard-
who's
The person
a real
didn't know?
one, because they didn't know what they were selling.
Wow.
So he thought it was a poster. He was like, "Oh, if it's a poster, it's $20. I didn't lose anything." He had it evaluated.
It was an original.
It was an original.
That's insane. So
$20.
because of the power of the internet, and you were just talking about Instagram and connecting directly with the artists, is that a threat to galleries? Like, will galleries become null and void at some point?
I think Big Brother too deep for it to become a threat.
Yeah, you think so?
I think it's still the hottie toddy. We got to drink wine and show up.
Right now.
The
Once
other
you get
It's
into
getting to
VR
that
and
point,
AR?
but there's still some doors that a early career artist or mid-career artist can't get into,
Okay.
that a gallery owner can still get you into. So
Like the Met.
we're still like, okay, so they're not obsolete yet. Not yet. But you can do okay by yourself.
Right.
You can do okay by yourself and you'll be just fine.
And see, a lot of people that watch our show and a lot of people that know me don't know that that's where my life started off. I was an artist. That's why I went to Florida State for. But when I made Curator, that was my whole goal, was to inform people and educate them on art, because it's the story, and this goes back to what we were talking about.
Right.
The stories told through art is
Right.
what I care more about right now.
Right.
Because I feel some of the stories are getting twisted because the 13 dwarfs that control TV, the 13 dwarfs that control the internet, which were like pretty much the internet cocaine cowboys, it's becoming the same thing in the art world.
Right.
It's these set amount of high elite curators that to me are telling falsified stories
Right.
when they're curating the art. And I was saying it would be so much more important to hear the story from the artist himself.
Right.
Have that captured as an audio bit, and to always know the truth versus Susan telling me that this is what Tom was feeling when he painted this. No, Tom wasn't. I talked to Tom last week.
Right, you
and
just trying to
he
play
said-
their mind emotions.
Yeah, Tom said he was actually high, and that's how he came up with this piece. You trying to make it seem like Tom was all emotional, and it had nothing to do with that. I want to know the real story behind the art, because although that is the beauty of art, the mystery
Right.
behind why the
Right.
artist did, sometimes you really want to know that story. Like,
Right.
like as we was talking about this piece
Yeah.
with Jamani, the big blue piece with the little yellow. I still
Right.
don't get why that piece is worth $40 million. But besides the fact that somebody else was willing to pay $39 million for
Right.
it, I don't get it. It's just blue and yellow. I don't even like Michigan Wolverines. I don't get it.
And that's
Yeah.
why it's so important to control our story. So I just came from Prospect 4, which is a citywide art fair in New Orleans.
Okay.
So there was a Barclay Hendricks piece in the show There's a young woman laying across.
Say that name again?
Barkley Hendricks.
Barkley Hendricks. I want our viewers to start Googling some of these names.
So there's a woman laying across a sofa. She's like half dressed, and the docent was giving people a tour, and she told them that, oh, she looks like a prostitute.
Wow.
So all of the black folks in the back stopped, and we like gasped, because it's clear that in the painting she has ballet shoes. Now, I don't know what prostitutes wear ballet shoes unless that's
Right.
something new that's popping right now that's gonna get you a couple extra dollars.
We missed that.
Right.
Yeah, but
So that's how she told our story that day.
See?
And
that's
we
what I'm
weren't
talking
there
about.
to do
Driving
it.
it down.
So that's, 45 minutes of people being incredibly upset.
Yeah.
He's passed away now, so he's not here.
To tell the
and this
story.
is how you represent us to a room full of people in a museum.
So I'm gonna be shallow real quick. Can you help the artists that continue to paint pictures of Biggie and Tupac and wondering why they not making money? What?
No, I can't. They have to want to change that. So for some people, you just have to realize that is that's their reality. That's what they know. All I can tell you is expand your horizon. Read, travel. You can go, what's that, the party bus, the mega bus? Mega
Yeah.
bus. Get yourself a $10 ticket and go somewhere else. So you and go learn something. Read a magazine. There's plenty on the internet. Read Sugarcane.
Better tell them.
That's true.
Better tell 'em.
SugarcaneMag.com.
I
That's
just,
where it's at.
I just want people to expand because, like you said, I've seen Van Gogh. Found like some of his I would consider as an artist those are probably continuous line sketches
Right.
where you're just not lifting. And people that are listening and not drinking or you're watching, continuous line sketches are a process you had to go through as an art student where you draw whatever image you're trying to draw, but you can't lift the pen or the pencil from the canvas.
Right.
Some of his continuous line sketches are now anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000,
See?
and they're on like 8x8 paper. Why do you think people have to show a talent of realism versus an expression of art when they're in the art world? And I hate to say this, but I notice it more so in the black community.
Because that's what we understand. I mean, you have to look at what people, and it doesn't matter their color. You have to look at what people understand. For a middle class family who's not been exposed to contemporary art, why am I looking at a painting with a dot on it? What am I supposed to look at? It's a dot.
Right.
Whereas if I'm looking at a painting of a garden or my mother or Martin Luther King, I know who that is. That makes sense
I never
to me.
thought about the element of socioeconomics of how you interpret
Right.
art. I will say, what's on a wall will say a lot to me about the person whose house I am.
Yeah.
I look at my life, and I was just lucky because my mother went back to college when I was 8. So she had to take humanities courses, and she took art history class. And I had to go with her because she didn't have a babysitter.
Yeah.
So I had to sit in on that class with her.
Oh, that was
and I
good. That's
loved
good.
her book, and I would just flip through. And it wasn't until like my late 20s that I realized I never saw any black artists in that book. And that's still the same text that colleges use
Today.
to teach
Wow.
art history.
Wow.
The same book.
All
But
right.
it still made a real impact on me.
So we're going to go ahead
Even
and get
still.
into the quick 6 because
Uh-oh.
your goal is to answer these in like one sentence or less. Some
Keep
of
it
them
hot.
might require a little more, but think
I
about
don't
it.
know if I can do that.
You can do it. You can do
Okay.
it. Question number 1. You finally get Sugarcane to the level you want, but you get the museum and you close on that $40 to $100 million piece. What song is playing in the background to represent the closing of the sale of that piece?
Can I curse?
Yes, absolutely.
That Cardi B song, Rain Down on a Bitch Twice. That's I'm sorry, I like trap music.
One time for trap music. Yes.
Yes.
The curator that likes trap music. That was great.
Yes.
If you had to give a new investor in art a piece of advice, what one piece of advice would you give?
Invest locally with local artists in your community.
Interesting.
Okay. If you had the opportunity to interview one artist, dead or alive, who would it be?
Jesus. Crap. I'll say interview her again, Howardina Pendell.
Okay.
She's my absolute favorite.
All right. Number 4 on Toya.
If you had the opportunity to work at a gallery or museum, just one of your choice, which one would it be?
Studio Museum of Harlem.
Nice.
Oh.
Yes. Yes.
What's the one biggest mistake you see most artists making that you wish they would fix?
Not following up.
Sound like contractors.
Not following up.
Right.
Yes.
Personal problems. If you were to be an artist, what style of art would you do?
Oh, that's a good one.
I'd go back to acting.
Okay, you would
Yeah.
stay in.
I would go
Gotcha.
back to theater, yeah.
Very
Sophomore, you want to close us out? You got
Man.
you got the opportunity to either do funny or you got the opportunity to go deep. Your choice.
No, it's not too deep, but it's just real because it's home. So I want you to speak to Chicago, Gary, Hammond,
Yes. There we
Midwest. I
go.
want you to speak to our hometown because
Yes.
we're cousins, like I said.
Yes.
Tell me one thing that you would advise, not too hard, not too deep. Give me one thing that you would say to a young you right now that's watching, a younger you that's trying to aspire to get out of, let's say, a gentrified situation.
I would say use your environment to your advantage. Continue to learn. We have the internet now, so there's nothing that you cannot learn and understand. Everything is at your fingertips. Make plans to move out of where you are with the idea of learning to bring it back to build that community. That's what I would say.
So, Melissa, I think one of the biggest things is you were one of the people I talked to about when I was coming up with Curator, and
Yes.
me and Dante was working on Curator. You've been a supporter of Digital Grass. We just want you to know we appreciate what you're doing for the art
Thank
community.
you.
Nothing you do is going unnoticed, so thank you for being a superhero to us.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, thank
And
you.
I think we definitely need to bring you back because as
Definitely for a post-Basel
yeah,
discussion.
as
Yes.
Alberto said, he wants art to become general.
Yes.
right.
And I think
You did.
continuing to have artistic
Yes.
conversations, as much as they may be boring to some people, it's not about touching the masses as much as it is changing
Right.
the mind of one at a time.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
I
Change
think
your life.
you've done that tonight, so we appreciate you
Thank
coming out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Know you got to get back to your husband over at Pam.
Yes.
I know you took that break for us, so
Yes.
let's give a round of applause to our superhero, Melissa. And
you
let's
so
thank
much.
our supporters, the Knight Foundation.
Thank you.
And we'll be back in a little bit with part 2 of the show, but we'll see you all later.